Good evening, or perhaps good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. And thank you for joining us for the last event of the Boutinot International Virtual Festival, the Winemaker Roundtable. My name is Jessica Pioli-Coccarese. I'm Marketing and Product Manager for Boutinot International, and I'm joined this evening by a few of our winemakers from around the world. So in France, we have actually the Boutinot France winemaking team. So there's Eric Monin, who's head winemaker, Guillaume Latang, who's winemaker for Boutinot France and does a lot of our New World wines, Julien Dugas, who does Domaine Boutinot, and Samantha Bailey, who is our master blender. Then joining us from Hurst-Monceau in the south of England is Colette O'Leary, head winemaker for Henna's. And last but not least is JD Rosso, who's joining us from Franschhoek in South Africa, and he's the head winemaker for Wildeburg. So nice to see you all. Thanks everybody for joining us this evening. We're going to just be sharing a couple of glasses of wine, and the winemakers are going to share some stories about their experiences working together to collaborate on different wines and their experiences in working in wineries around the world. So if you have any questions or any comments, pop them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll pass them over to the winemaking team. And then lastly, I just want to thank all of the winemakers, not only for joining me this evening, but for all your hard work over the last 2 days. It's been a really good 2-day festival. So my first question to you all is how have you enjoyed the last 2 days, and how have you found the experience?
Wow, it's been a strong experience, a challenging experience, Jess. I can only say one thing. Everybody around the table, all the winemakers, will be more than happy to jump in a plane to go and see the customers, en chair et en os, real people, you know?
Yeah. Face-to-face contact again.
Yeah,
exactly. Lovely. So the first wine that we're going to be starting with this evening is the Henna's Rosé, because not only are we here to talk about winemaking and your experiences, but it's also a bit of a celebration for the end of the festival, and what is a celebration without some sparkling wine. So the first thing, well, I'll wait for the French winemakers to pour themselves a glass.
But because it's a real session, we are going to drink, not to taste. We don't have any speed tune. It's the last one of the 2 days, so we are going to celebrate with you now.
Good, wonderful. That sounds great.
Maria, please. Careful with the cork on the screen there.
Yes. So part of the reason that we've chosen to start with this wine is the wine was made in 2018. It's been aging since then. And 2018 was the year that Eric and Guillaume, you went to Henna's to work the vintage and do the harvest and get the wines in tank. So my question to you is, obviously you have lots of experience in working in quite well-established wine regions around the world. How did your experiences working in the UK, in England, a very new wine region, perhaps with fewer regulations in place, how did it differ, and how did you find the experience?
Guillaume, I start?
Yeah.
I mean, the experience for us, the hardest experience is the fact that we've been spending 6 weeks there, renting an house, driving left, and having to shop in a shop that is not ours. So that was the hardest part in comparison with the winemaking part of the job. But more seriously, it has been a fantastic experience, and we've been lucky because 2018 in England has been an absolute.
Cheers, everybody.
Has been an absolute fantastic vintage in terms of weather. We brought everything with Guillaume, expecting a lot of rain, and finally we had quite a lot of sun. So the vintage was helping us. It has been new to us, especially because the winery was new, especially because the vineyard was a new vineyard to us, or a bit of a new vineyard, so we needed to adapt with the different picking organization. Every day was a challenge, and I would say that we didn't meet a serious challenge in terms of regulation, because the regulation is easy, and we were only making English sparkling wine. So the part of the challenge has been more on the winemaking side, but perhaps Guillaume can speak a bit about the winemaking aspect and the challenge we had to create this rosé, because we've been hesitating a lot on the process, but our master winemaker found interesting solution. I'll let him have a word about it.
Yeah, it was a life experience to begin with, and after that a winemaking experience. It was a huge discover for us, and by the way, it was a last minute winemaking decision, I would say. And even if we are used to dealing with plenty of grapes, plenty of country, as soon as you arrive in a new country, you have to learn. You have to try to learn and take a good decision during 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, it was a discovery, and as Eric said, it was a new winery on top of that. So new equipment, a lot of things. So yeah, a very good experience. At the end, we are very, very happy with the result. And every year we try to improve. We try to learn more. And now with Colette, we have a good. We share a lot of experience all together. So it's always a pleasure. Yeah.
Colette, was it?
Yeah,
we
experienced things together, good and bad, because I started in the January after the harvest of these grapes, and so I was involved in the blending of the rosé. But 2018, as Eric and Guillaume said, was a beautiful vintage. It was hot and sunny, and it was as good as England ever gets. And so I think that Eric and Guillaume thought that they brought France and the south of France to England, and that was going to set the tone. And then in 2019, it was quite a different experience. And I have a photo of Guillaume sitting in a deck chair in the concrete, pouring rain, head to toe waterproofs, and a really unimpressed looking face. It's like, this is not the England I signed up for in the long term. So it changes year to year, and the challenges are different every year.
So they were spoiled in 2018 with the good weather.
A little bit. We
deserved it, Jessica.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's when Eric fell in love with BLTs, bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwiches.
Yeah, that was my menu for every lunch. BLT. Yeah, I'm missing seriously the BLT. Yeah.
Excellent. How has the winery changed since then, Colette? Has it?
Well, one of the big things that's happened since Eric and Guillaume and Boutinot were brought on board is that we've more than doubled the size of the winery. But beyond that, the big difference, I mean, I learned so much from the team. It's just amazing, and it inspires me every day. But also the big difference, I think, from working elsewhere is that we've got people kind of in charge that are winemakers. So to a certain extent, and this sounds so silly, but things like buying proper ladders so that you can get into the press, buying things that mean that you're not having to lift so much or do so much, or buying a slightly faster pump so that you're more efficient. These are small things that make your day-to-day life so much easier, and they only happen when you're kind of working with people that understand the job. I think in lots of wineries, it can be either run by kind of money men that don't really understand, or people that haven't done the job day to day. And so, I mean, it sounds silly, but some of the biggest things that have happened is just making our lives easier, which then makes the wines better, because you focus on the stuff that's really important rather than the stuff that is less important and just takes forever. So yeah, there's some of the things, and then some of the tricks that you learn from the wealth of experience that they've got from making wines all over the place. They all come into play. So yeah, it's just every time we kind of speak, I learn something else. So yeah.
So Colette, thank you for saying that. The only thing we haven't improved is the distilmer.
Yes. Well, yes. So we still have for the rosé that we're drinking now. We do it from purely red grapes, and we get the color from whole bunch press and allowing the grapes to soak with the juice for a certain amount of time. And to help it on its way, we destem some of the grapes from the whole bunches. But because we only do a small amount at the moment, we haven't justified buying a mechanical destemmer to separate the berries from the stalks. So it's a manual destemmer, and it's like a hand crunching thing. And Eric set the tone in 2018 that the song that we have to do it to is I Like to Move It, Move It. So that's the that's the first song that goes out over Sleepyhurst Monsoon. And basically, it's really hard work. You have to be quite fit, and it's quite a physical job. So we all get to choose one song on rotation. We'll take it in turns, do our turn on the manual destemmer. And the people that choose something like Bohemian Rhapsody, which goes on for minutes and minutes and minutes, always lose out. But yeah, we always come back to I like to move it, move it.
So questions come in from Spain. How much has the winemaking team in Kiran and your philosophy there, and Guillaume, your philosophy with Boutinot France, how much has that influenced the Henna's philosophy as you've started working there, Colette, and how the Henna's home Henna's has developed?
As I said, we have to find out the good decision when we discover a new country like this. Obviously, we have our Boutinot philosophies. We have already an idea of the wine we want to achieve, but we have to adapt. We have to adapt it to the country. And to begin with, we don't have to be too ambitious and to be
expecting the same thing that what we had in France at the time.
Mm.
So the adaptation that Guillaume doesn't want to speak, but I can share that with you. We are just in between us. Ourselves. For example, Guillaume said we must do the malolactic and the wines. How do you do that? I'm sorry, it's a bit technical, but you need to grow some bacteria and suddenly transform the toilet into a sauna. It's 25 degrees to grow bacteria in the shower. That's the way Guillaume can adapt to make good wine. But I can tell you it worked well because the malo apple and the acidity is just spot on.
Yeah. And Colette, from your side, were you, in working with the French team at Henna's, did you pick up a lot of, you said you picked up a lot of their experiences, but did that influence your winemaking approach at Henna's as well? I think Colette may have frozen, or she's just thinking hard. I'm not sure, but
I am sure yes.
There we go. Colette, sorry, did you hear my question?
I'm back.
You're back, yes.
No, I got as far as did you pick up a lot of, and then I'm afraid I froze.
Okay, so in working with when you first arrived at Henna's, in working with the French team, in picking up a lot of their experiences from around the world and you know their influences from being French winemakers, did that influence your winemaking at Henna's?
Oh, absolutely. Every day, and only in a good way. I mean, you'd be a fool not to take on board the experience and the lessons that the guys in France have got. But what is really wonderful about it is that it's not a diktat. It's as Guillaume says, you learn what works in the countries. We're working at the moment with a variety called Bacchus, which the French haven't really worked with much, and yet there's varieties that are similar aromatically. So we're drawing on that experience and what they've learned, obviously from years and years of working with aromatic varieties. What we're trying to do is make English wines, but draw on the experience that everybody else has got. There is one of the jokes that we like is that there's an English acidity that does run through it, and what we're trying to do is still harness that. So we're making English wines, but we do want something that is modern and fresh and reflective of the very best we can do. So it's for me anyway, I think it's a really happy combination of drawing on that experience and learning, but still trying to have an English wine that is sympathetic to where the grapes are grown and the wine is made, but that learns from the very best in the business. So for me, it's a perfect balance.
I think Colette mentioned something that is incredibly important for the Boutinot ethos, making the best of what we can do. we are a wine business. Wine is at the heart of everything we do. And it's so important to respect the wine, respect the countryside, respect the traditions, but also exchange with other people and exchange with colleagues from around the world to make sure that we're always progressing. So we're always doing the best of what we can do.
Nice. Is that the same for you in South Africa, JD? So we were talking about the influence that the French winemaking team had at Henna's. So when you were establishing Wildeburg, did the winemaking team there help influence the philosophy at Wildeburg as well?
Yeah, I think definitely the French, but also some of the UK colleagues that we work with. It's quite nice to work in a team and just to send samples, well, in the current situation, just to send samples over to Eric and Samantha and the French team and say, taste this, what's your thoughts on this? Or send it to the UK, to Manchester office and get Robin and some of the product managers to taste, and just to get as much feedback as you can from them. And I think then you go back to the drawing board and you decide as a winemaker from South Africa or from Henna's or from France, what is it that you want in the wine and you think needs to taste. So I think that makes us stronger, definitely, and it makes us a great team, yeah.
So even if you don't travel all the time to the different wineries, you still send samples to each other and collaborate from a distance, as it were.
Yes. Still now we are doing quality control for GD.
Any good?
Be careful, Didier. Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
So speaking of the Wildeburg white, and we're on the topic of philosophies as well. So that's a wine that's been made following the Wildeburg philosophy. Would you be able to just tell us a bit more about that, JD, and kind of what brought this wine to fruition, as it were?
I guess so. Yeah. So we actually covered it a lot over the last few days, and I think Wildeburg in Franschhoek is synonym to Semillon, and Semillon does very well in the valley. And we have this ancient bush vines in the valley that was planted in 1905, the oldest block that we work with, but also 1936. So we're talking about what's at 116 years old. And with the wine, the philosophy is literally to take or work or make wine with this vineyard that actually express the place and actually express the history of this vineyard, and not try to intervene in the winery and trying to add or panel beat a wine into something that it's not really. So it's really a laid back, but a lazy winemaking, as we call it, and really let the vineyard shout and give it a voice now.
And that's quite similar to Henna's, isn't it, Colette? That you let the wine do the talking.
You know what? Yes, I mean it is. And we definitely do try that. But I love this because I've heard JD use that expression quite a lot about lazy winemaking, and I just think I don't think that applies at Henna's. We work really, really freaking hard.
Just on the de-stemming, if nothing else.
Our grapes, we don't intervene much. We do as little as possible, but we aren't blessed with the same conditions that I think South Africa is. And so at certain times it does mean that we have to make slightly different decisions. So I don't think our winemaking is quite as lazy as JD's. Like Eric was saying with the mallow, like it's not easy to get mallow through some of our acidity and low pH. So yeah, our bathroom turns into a warm room to try and cultivate the mallow, just to try and encourage it to grow. So we all have our ways.
Well, Colette, that's well done. So you can have your extra barrels now and your extra space. Well played.
It's tough.
For me. Yeah.
Yeah, you should make it look harder.
We try.
So, JD, on the I think it was the Strange Company Instagram, I saw the other day that there was a snake tangled in a fence at the Wildeburg farm. So it just made me wonder as an English person who there aren't really many snakes in this country, thankfully for me, that's quite a strange thing to see of a day. So what other sort of crazy things do you see or have you seen in your experience in winemaking?
Well, I think our biggest challenge is not the snakes, it's the baboons. And as you know, this year was the first vintage, and our biggest challenge was just to keep the baboons out of the vineyard. And we always tell the story about one of the colleagues, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Paku was at the farm, and we were having a braai, and he quickly asked the farm manager, he wants to go up in the mountain, but it's a few hundred meters. And about an hour later, I got a call from the farm manager and said, listen, you need to pick me up at the other side of the mountain. I'm like, are you kidding me? And eventually they got quiet, and I actually got in my car, went around the mountain, and there was Paku and Pierre running. I was like, this is weird. And the story started out as 10 baboons, cornered them, and tried to kill them, and then it was like 100 baboons. So I haven't talked to Paku in a while, but I think we are at 1,000 baboons now. So, we've got about 30 baboons living up in the mountain above Wildeburg, and we've obviously with the fruit now and everything, it's quite a challenge giving them a small part of the crop, and then keeping the rest for us. So. Yeah.
We have a big thought when Gilly says that we have a big thought for our friend Paco.
Friend, yeah.
And what about in France? I assume baboons aren't much of a problem in Domaine Boutinot, but what sort of thing has happened?
We did have problems with sanglier, wild boar, a few years back.
White boar.
Yeah, we go very well with the sauvage, presumably.
Sorry?
It would go very well with the sauvage, presumably.
Yeah, if they wanted to leave any grapes on the vines, a similar sort of problem. They actually churn the ground, and they eat the roots and the berries. So you have to find ways of keeping the wild boar at bay.
So I think somebody's put in the comments how many baboons are there at Henna's, but I imagine the wildlife at Henna's is a bit more tame than baboons and wild boars.
Well, you say that, but our lone badger is something to.
Badger.
We've gone from snakes to baboons, then we're on badgers now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
The subject is animals and winemaking tonight.
Yes, yeah.
Let's go.
Too good. Yeah. So possibly a controversial question for you all, but what is your favorite wine from each other's wineries?
Silence.
I'm just trying to get you all arguing, basically.
Favorite.
I have a real soft spot for Le Cis, however you say it properly with the French accent. That was what I defaulted to a lot over Christmas, and I really like that. So I love all of the wines, obviously, but that was the one I kept going back to, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, Colette is not just polite. Colette can access all the wines from our storage in London, which is not our case. Yes. So tonight we are super happy, super lucky to have a Henna's Rosé or to have a Wildeburg Sauvignon, because they've been sent specially for this event. Most of the time we don't have the chance to have them. That said, we are going to finish these bottles tonight. There's no question around that. Sorry, Julien, but we'll keep the red for the cheese later.
Yeah.
What about you, JD? Which one?
No, I agree actually with Colette. Le Cis is also one of my favorites, and then the rosé from Henna's. But I'm still waiting for my samples. So for me and for Rainer, it's actually later this week. We will have a nice braai stoop at Wildeburg, and then we can enjoy the wines, and then we'll get some feedback later on then.
Excellent. Nice. So I think the third wine that we've got this evening is a Saint Laurent, which is from Genety, which obviously it's been made by Samantha I love you're all drinking in unison. So it's made by So it's made by Samantha in collaboration with the growers that you know really well in the region, and they sort of give you access to their cellars, and you can go in and find the wines. But it's been made with a view to encompassing Boutinot's aims at Genety and in Burgundy going forwards. But obviously today, you know, those growers really well, and they give you all this access. But what was it like when you first arrived in the region several years ago?
Whoa, when I first arrived in France, I was a lot younger. I didn't speak that much French.
Yeah.
So there was this young English person roaming around vineyards in very rural France. It was tough, to be honest. It was tough. People didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't understand why I didn't eat meat, and particularly saucisson, because saucisson in Beaujolais is just a must. But I've learned to adapt, and they've learned to adapt, and I think I've found my place now, and I would never go back on what I've done and the experiences that I've been through. It's been a fantastic, dare I say, 30 years. And day one and day, whatever 30 times 365 means, it's just a new experience almost every day. We're dealing with so much more variety now than the first years. Obviously, having a lot more colleagues as well, because to start off with, there was just me and I think 4 people in the UK. And when I think of how big the team is now and how far-reaching Boutinot is these days, it's just amazing to see where we've come from and where we're at, and the projects where we're going. It's a fantastic place, and the multitude of wines that we manage to taste and discuss and share is really, really amazing.
So do you think it's important to, as winemakers in general, not just in terms of regions and things, but to push yourselves outside of your comfort zones to try and find something new and you know, try something?
For me, that's essential from a personal point of view, but also from a wine portfolio point of view, because if we just live with what we know and what we're happy with, we don't get the additional diversity. We don't have the little curios that may be added to a range. And I think overall people would end up getting bored. It's the little gems that we find whilst seeking the standards that give us I'm going to say a raison d'être. It makes life far more interesting, and it makes the offering that we have to customers far more interesting too.
And Jess, there is always a trial in the team in South Africa, in England, or in France when we do winemaking. It's a controlled exercise that we do, so that the volume is not that big. And if we make a mistake, we can absorb it, if I can say. But without these trials, and I think that GD did a fantastic trial with a potential project around straw wine, we don't learn, we don't improve and don't progress, and that's always super exciting. So we see that more like excitement than any non-comfort zone. But perhaps we can jump onto the straw wine.
Yeah, the straw wine, Eric. So
Tell me.
Straw wine is a dessert wine that you usually can make in South Africa, but because in harvest time we don't get rain and it's about 40 degrees Celsius out, well, it's always been like that. And when we decided to make straw wine this year, it's the little cloud at the bottom of the property for those of you who've been there. Yes. Everybody thinks it was funny, and it just started raining for the last 2 weeks. It's just raining. The humidity is sky high. It's like we're in Europe, but luckily it's now nice and sunny. Was today out sunny, so hopefully it will dry in the next 2 weeks, and then we will do a little basket press and ferment it naturally in a 300-liter barrel. So all thumbs that will be a success of the end of harvest.
That's a lot of work for 300 litres.
Oh, yeah.
First time and last time.
Was it your idea, JD?
Well, we wanted to do something special so we have this small close, and it's about 800 vines, mostly Semillon, but it's actually a field blend. There's a little bit of Muscat d'Alexandrie or Hannepoort. There's 2 or 3 vines of Chardonnay, and then there's 2 Shiraz vines in there for some reason. But it's small, and we wanted to do something special for the maiden vintage of Wildeburg, and trying to make like a straw wine. And just think about it, in 10 years' time, you coming over. We're celebrating 10 years at Wildeburg, and for desserts we have this nice dessert straw wine that we can serve for with the ice cream or something on the patio. So, but it's still there. It's still there. So it's a lot of stress, I must say. So hopefully we'll put it in a bottle soon.
GD.
How far through fermentation is it?
No, it's still drying. So we pick it at, say, 21 barley. It's been lying outside now for 2 weeks. We had 2 thunderstorms in between. So it's at 28 barley, and it needs to be at 40. So hopefully by May, we will start fermenting that or something, but we'll see.
That sounds like making straw wine in Sussex.
Very similar.
The magic of this company, GD, I assume you are practicing an English winemaking for the straw wine. I mean, with a lot of energy.
What's the English winemaking of straw wine?
That's the opposite of
there isn't an English winemaking of straw wine because it's not dry long enough to dry.
I think you trick up your sleeve how I can dry it quicker, but yeah, so. But it's getting there. It's getting there.
As I say, we struggle to warm our barrels for Mallow, so we're not yet at the straw wine stage. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, we always like a challenge, as Samantha was saying. You know, you've got to constantly push and challenge. So maybe we'll give it a go. I think we'll see how you get on first, and then we'll decide.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest challenge you've faced so far, Colette, as a winemaker, especially an English winemaker, perhaps?
Oh, do you know what? This is more a personal thing, I think. My biggest challenge is probably second guessing and a lack of confidence or a lack of experience. The thing with winemaking is that it is the best job in the world, but you never necessarily know when enough is enough, or when you're absolutely there, or whether you've done the very best you can do and whether you should be doing something more. And I don't know whether that's something that other winemakers think, for example, JD. And certainly some of it will kick in after more and more years of experience. I think you'll just know. I think the hardest challenge for me has been learning when you think you've got the very best that you can do, and having confidence in that, because the grapes evolve, the wine evolves in tank, the wine evolves in bottle, it evolves over age, and every time you taste it will be different. And so having confidence to know that it's good, it's really good. I think that's probably there's all sorts of challenges, but I think that's probably the one that kind of keeps coming back. And that's what drives us forward, in fairness, though. That's what drives us to make better wines or try things differently. So I think that's for me, but I don't know whether, JD, you have a similar kind of...
100%. I think winemaking is definitely a team sport. And I think as soon as you think you're the winemaker and you can make all the decisions and you know everything, then your end of your career is very, very close. So I think for us, and I've got Reino, so especially with blending, when I'm the guy usually going back to add 1%, to add 5%, and somewhere you have to stop and say, listen here, this is amazing. Just get away, and he will drag me away from the tasting table and just say, let's do it. And literally just before bottling, we taste and we're like, oh, can we just a little bit of this barrel and stuff like that. But that's the privilege we have you can see on the screen, and being part of a bigger winemaking team. Even if I'm in South Africa and Colette in England and the French winemaking team, I think with stuff like Zoom and WhatsApp and stuff like that, it's easy to ask a quick question and you don't get like a dumb question in winemaking. Sometimes it's like 100 answers to one question, and you just need to get all that answers and make it your own and make a decision for what's going to work for you in England or in France or in South Africa. Yeah.
When I was studying, the one thing that they said probably early on was the biggest thing we're going to teach you is that the answer is it's complicated and it depends. And basically there is no straight answer to it, and it will take so many turns. And it's interesting what you say, JD, about you have Reino, because sometimes you do need somebody that constantly wants to tinker and play and twist, and then you need somebody that says, enough, it's great, we're ready to bottle, we've got to get this wine into bottle. And so you, as JD says, it is about a team, and you need a skill set that complements each other to bring out the very best in each other and in the wines.
Mm-hmm. And Samantha and Eric, with a few more winemaking years under your belts, is that something you felt when you first started, or is it something that sticks with you no matter what, no matter how much experience?
It's really important, because when I started, I was very much on my own. Paul Boutinot travelled to France fairly often, but wasn't a permanent fixture in the office. So I was tasting an awful lot on my own. And when you do have a doubt and you don't have anybody else to turn to, you think, ooh, have I made the right decision? Have I chosen the right wine? And it's not particularly comfortable. So enlarging the wine team has been a really good exercise for all of us. And the four of us here are forever tasting together and working out how we can make the best blend, because much of our work is about blending and creating our special cuvée. And everybody may have a different opinion, but somehow, I'm not quite sure how, somehow we all managed to say yes to the final blend that is put together and get it into bottle. And that is really, really important, that general consensus. I think we're very lucky to be able to reach a consensus together, because sometimes there are elements that you think, oh my goodness, no, it doesn't work. But through trials between us, we managed to create the right recipe.
Yeah. Somebody's just commented that it sounds, even though winemaking, there's a lot of science in there, it sounds like a creative and artistic thing as well, that you can always keep going, and you just have to at some point kind of cut yourself off and say, that's it, I'm done. And that's what I'm not going to fiddle with it anymore, and it's time to put it in a bottle. Is that accurate? Do you think it's...
Yeah, it's a good comparison, Jess. And I don't know if we are artists, but it looks like sometimes one parameter is that the decision we take, sometimes all together, we all think it's the good decision, but the truth and the answer will probably appear a couple of months later, if not years later. I mean, on Henna's, we take decision today, and we'll see the result in 2 years' time. So that's then where you need to take notes and use your memory. The solution is never given the day after. Absolutely never. So this is where you need a big memory to learn and take this experience to then use it for the following vintages that are always different.
Mm.
Exactly the same situation for the Queyrin Côte Sauvage, because the wine is a blend. Well, Julian will tell you what it is.
Yeah, when you blend the wine in December, in example 2020, you imagine the wine will be bottling in 23. It's difficult to have a projection like that, but it's an experience, it's a share, a little bit the feeling, and sometimes you cross the finger. But no, seriously, you never sure. It's for that the job is so exciting, because there is nothing is right on the book. You create every time. It's a feeling, a knowledge. You share your experience, and you learn vintage after vintage in every part of the world. It's for that it's fun to work in this company, because we can share in different countries, different experience, and I think it's like that we raise a lot of our knowledge. If you compare a winemaker alone in this cellar, in example in Queyrin, you improve maybe a little bit less, I'm sure.
So at the end, a good winemaker, it's a little bit of winemaking skills and plenty of resilience to and avoid to be sure that you know and you have the good recipe or the good equation.
And we are very lucky. There's no computer to do our job, neither app. So we are happy with that.
Yeah, the human being is still a necessity. That's amazing.
True. True. So speaking of sort of apps and things and, you know, the future, where do you think, or where would you like your winemaking to take you next? I guess I'll ask Eric first. Is there a region in particular, of maybe one of the emerging regions, that you think is going to be particularly interesting to go and work in, or you're excited about?
I mean, for me, you have to put back that to my studies. At the time, we were dreaming to go to Chile, to South Africa, or to Australia. And 3-4 years ago, I've been told, Eric, we need you to make a wine in England. Really? I mean, whereas I know wines were produced there. I was traveling back from South Africa, from GD's place, having pH not far from 4 of pH, landing in England, seeing a pH close to 3, below 3, it's something you've never seen in the books. So I'm sure you have the same experience. So what's exciting is what we've done at Henna, because it was non-expected. What we've done in Canada, in the Okanagan Valley, and what is called the next world. There's something happening on that side of the planet, on the northern hemisphere, and it's probably something that we definitely have to consider.
Mm-hmm. And JD and Colette, I know you get, you said before, you get set challenges quite often, being sort of the newer wineries to Boutinot. Are there any challenges that you've been given that you're looking forward to trying, or are you sort of quite happily trying to just perfect the wines that you're already making, or?
Both. The challenge of biodynamic farms and Chenin Blanc in Sussex, while also trying to perfect what we're doing.
So is Chenin growing in Sussex? Somebody did ask before whether or not Chenin could grow in the south of England.
No, it's one of the dreams of one of the directors to experiment. So we draw on JD's experience and knowledge to say whether that might be a success in Sussex.
What about you, JD?
I think from Wildeburg, we are still way in the beginning of our journey and our story. So there's so much still that needs to happen at the farm. And like I said, this year was only the first vintage that we harvest from the farm. So we must learn the grapes. It's still baby grapes. We must experiment in the winery and see how to bring the best out of this grapes. So no, I think for us, we are just focusing on the present now, slightly looking in the future. But first thing now is to finish harvest 2021, hopefully before the end of March, because it's super late this year. And then we will take it from there and see what lies ahead and what we're going to do for next year.
Lovely. Nice. And are there any challenges coming up for Boutinot France that you're hoping to rise to, Eric?
Sorry, can you repeat this one?
Sorry, are there any challenges been set for Boutinot France or Domaine Boutinot that you're hoping to rise to?
Yeah, I think you can speak about it.
Yes, it's a new. It was 2 weeks now. Domaine Boutinot is now sustainable. We was like that in the past, but we have now obtained a certification. And today we obtained the certification HVU, but it's a French certification. I let Samantha translate HVE in English. But I can try, but be careful to Europe. Haute valeur environnementale, high environment value. It's a French certification. It's not like organic, but it corresponds better to my think, because you are less close and you can more. I can continue to experiment and to work like I think it's the best, and I hope continues like that a long time.
So that's something just that has been done in Boutinot Rhone, that is proceeding right now in South Africa, and that has been also obtained in England. So the next step is being greener, I'd like to say, in a very simple vocabulary.
Nice. Lovely. And a good question to come in from Italy, asking whether winemaking is more about the vines and the grapes or the relationships So whether that be with growers or with your winemaking team, which one do you think is more important?
In any case, the beginning of the job of the winemaker starts in the vineyard. Without a good fruit, without a good start in the vineyard, even if you are the best winemaker in the world, you are not able to create a good wine. And we have to start at the beginning, to start a beautiful job in a vineyard. And I used to say that to begin with, let the nature do the job, and after that, the winemaking is the easiest. So
it's a bit like cooking, really. If you've got good ingredients, you can make a pretty delicious dish. If your ingredients are mediocre, you'll have a result, but it probably won't be what you're looking for.
True. And what about in Colette in the UK, where the winemaking, obviously it's quite a small winemaking community, are relationships with other local growers and wineries important to the Henna's winemaking journey as well?
Yes, they are. I would say both the relationship. I mean, in general terms, Guillaume's absolutely right. It all starts in the vineyard, and if you haven't got good fruit, you're not going to get anywhere. The relationships are super important, and whichever direction those relationships go, most of us work in a small cellar or a small team, and if you don't get on well with the people in your team, and if you're not trusting the people that you're working alongside every day, then you're in quite a lot of trouble. Or the collaboration, as we've talked about quite a lot across Boutinot. And then yes, in England we are a small community. People move around. There's not much that people don't know. I think, to put it in context, the English wine scene is about the size in terms of hectares of Queyranne. So I'm pretty sure Julian would say everybody knows everybody's business in Queyranne. So it's similar in England, that you have to get along with people, and you would be a fool not to try and draw on some of that experience and knowledge. We're all battling the same issues in terms of disease and vintage variation, and learning best practice is really key. And it's a small world, and yeah, you're a fool not to try and learn from people, but also just to get along with people. It is a small industry.
Wine is a people business in general. Yeah. Whether it's at the making stage or at the drinking stage, we need people.
It's true. It's not made to be kept on a shelf and looked at for forever. It's made for drinking and sharing. This is true. Somebody's asked the question, I think, referring back to sort of the nightmare you're having at the moment with weather, JD, and the image of Guillaume in his waterproofs in the pouring rain. That obviously, I think people have a very romantic idea of winemaking and what it is that winemaking involves, but it actually sounds like it can be quite a difficult job sometimes. So they've asked what keeps you all doing the job, even when it's not the fun parts, when it's cold and wet and rainy.
Well, I can answer this, Jess. When I was in university, there was like a sitcom the Afrikaans sitcom on TV. I can't say 100% if that's the reason, but and it was like winemakers walking around with suits and sitting around and sipping on champagne in the luxury estates in Stellenbosch in Franschhoek. And the next year we had 67 winemakers studying at first years at the University of Stellenbosch, because everybody thought this is the job that they want and this is what I want to do with my life. Unfortunately, in our fourth year, we have our practical year where you physically, for the first time, you go out into a winery and you work a harvest. And from that 67 people that did their practical, I think there's about 12 that actually today is winemakers. So I actually said to them, listen, you can swap it around and then you do it your first year, and I promise you there will be like 10 people want to do it. And I think it's really the love for winemaking, the love working. Like I said, it's a people industry. You work with grapes. It's a tangible thing. It's a lot of stress. You work hard, but at the end of the day, there's nothing better than to pour a wine to a customer, to a friend, to family, and they like the wine. There's nothing worse if they don't, but just that hopefully they will like the wine and have a smile on the face and the community of the wine, and just drink and have fun and laugh. Yeah. So I think that's for me the up part or the positive part of this whole thing.
I'd like to say as a conclusion for GD, each time we pour a sip of the wine we've made, it's full of the memories, the sweat, the hard time we've had. But the bottle is full of hopefully fantastic wine, but of memories for us. And this is something we love to share with the customers, because outside of the wine itself, there's a story, and the story is different for each vintage. And this is probably the motivation we have.
Nice.
Yep.
Lovely. So speaking of memories, possibly just to finish off the session, possibly something people ask you all the time, but if you could give yourself back at the start of your careers a piece of advice, particularly pertaining to winemaking, or perhaps just to life in general, what would that piece of advice be? So Samantha, if you have.
Wow, that would be, if you have a dream, stick to it, you'll find a way to make it happen.
Oh, nice. That's a good piece of advice, I think.
Oh, that's beautiful.
We need to speak about our dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Personal or professional?
Whichever you prefer, Julia.
Professional. I can launch an idea. It will be fun for the next year where we can move again to make a special cuvée with 20% of Domaine Boutinot, 25% of Domaine Boutinot, 25% of Wildebert, 25% of Henna, and 25% of Genesee. And we call that the world of Boutinot. No, what do you think? It will be a great challenge to adjust every part and to make a right blend. And like that, we can show our knowledge. No, what do you think?
We just need to follow the regulation. As long as the regulation is with us, we call the cuvée the 12 ants because of the sequence. Perhaps it will happen in the future.
Sounds like an intriguing blend with the English sparkling wine. So, JD, do you have a piece of advice you would give your past self?
I'm thinking that I'm sure that's a very difficult question, and I think Samantha nailed it. I wanted to do like a drum roll, like and say thank everybody for joining, and just close my computer. So I'm rather not going to add on that. I think that was perfect. I think every winemaker's got different paths. Where we are sitting now, I started in a big winery. About 20,000 tons. But the experience I draw out of that was managing and looking at bigger tanks and stuff like that. And now I make a wine which last year was 900 bottles of a top cuvée. So I think, just believe in yourself sometimes, have friends along the line, smile, and then just follow your dreams. You will get there, like Samantha said.
Lovely. So any final messages to give to the people that have joined us this evening? Other than cheers and thank you for joining. Is there anything else anybody wants to say to our audience?
No, cheers. Thank you very much.
Well, I think that's
I guess it means a lot that everyone has supported us over the last year. It's been really tough for everybody in so many different ways, and the fact that there's still interest and we're all going to come out of this. I guess we're all grateful for the support.
Lovely. Yeah. I think that's lovely. Yep, nice note to end on. So just remains for me to say thank you very much again for joining me this evening, and thank you to our audience for joining all of us. And again, thank you for all of your input and all your help over the last 2 days. And looking forward to seeing you again sometime soon, hopefully. But other than that, we'll see you again soon, and goodbye and good evening.
Okay. Bye-bye.